Computer. So yes, good morning everyone and welcome to the third webinar of this week. I don't normally find myself doing that, but notwithstanding, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So welcome to Ben, Pablo, Samantha and probably Ray at this stage. And I've also beaming this live into the Agrarians workplace where I see this screens disappearing into screens. So, you know the drill, the three of you, you've all asked nice questions over the journey, so let's get to it. Put a hand up and see who goes first. Who's it gonna be? There we go. Well done, Ben.
Morning.
Good morning.
Usual suspect number one checking in.
Oh, well, it's either you or I've got the three usual suspects with me this morning, and he's number four, so we're all good. Love it.
You guys are still up in Myocum, are you?
Yes. I'm just feeling Owen come towards us.
Owen.
The cyclone from up north.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm in Queensland.
The one that,
I know about that.
Where are you?
We're about 5 hours north of you.
Yeah, that's right. So Owen will come to you before it comes here, and before it comes to Victoria.
Well, the Victoria, Tasmania at this rate. I don't know if it's actually tracking, but it's definitely the whirlwind. I saw a great satellite compilation. It was about 2 days of satellite into about 30 seconds of the last event we had. And it shows the whole of Australia, and it's just phenomenal the way it moves and what it draws in.
Oh no, that's what. It was really windy on the coast here yesterday, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I saw some of that same footage, and I went, oh, that explains it.
Yeah.
And the velocity that it draws from outside is phenomenal.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
anyway,
so I think we're due for a fair bit of rain this weekend.
Yeah. We got some earlier in the week too. This week in Victoria, which I've missed out on.
Yeah,
an inch from another system that came, I think that was the one that hit Sydney and New South Wales.
Yeah.
So we don't mind a wet summer.
No. Well, it's pretty regular up here. It's obviously, but we're getting a new tank delivered on Monday. So just after. I kind of need it empty.
Well, no, your gutters will be nice and clean from all of this. And all of that. Well, either that or they'll be filled more with mushy leaves.
No, we're pretty good. There's not a lot of tall timber around the house, so it's pretty clean. And so we have a big tank coming, and then got to transfer the 15,000 litre tank into it's a 31,000 litre, so it's a big fella. In terms of house tanks, it's
that's a good size. That'll do. So that's just for your drinking water mainly, or
no? We've got this is sort of one of my questions I was going to ask you, but right now we've got a 7,000 litre stainless.
nice.
I call it a header tank.
Yep.
Because I've built a platform for it, so it's elevated about 1.5 meters. So the top of it's about 3.5 meters. And the idea is that, not the idea, what I've done is there's two water systems in the house. So there's a gravity-fed system and a pump system, which is a variable
pump.
Yeah, it's not one of the Onga ones, it's the Grundfos variable speed. So it's only nice and easy.
Yep.
But we're on the top of a hill. So having a gravity-fed water system on the top of a hill is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Well, the only way to get away with it really is to pump to a header tank, which is 2-3 meters higher than any outlet.
Well, that's what I've done. So that stainless tank stays full.
Yep.
It gets pumped to just manually. I do it every couple of weeks because it doesn't drop a lot. It's only for water and all the cold taps. So basically, all the cold taps in the house are all gravity fed.
I see.
With a gravity-fed charcoal filter in the kitchen for drinking water.
Yep.
We just like it literally a ceramic urn. That's what we fill
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're
but it
good.
works great,
Oh, this place that we're at the moment, they've got one of those fancy filters, which filters, everything known to man. But then it adds stuff, and we were going, "What the hell is with this water?"
Is it one of those ones where you turn it on and come back next week and your glass is full?
No, no, no. It's actually quite good from that perspective. The flow rate's good, but they add once you've filtered it, and it's a multi-type filter, so it's got all sorts of different filters. Very fancy. It's an under sink model. It looks pretty expensive, but
But requires pressure to operate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know what pressure, because these two buildings we've been working in here have they've both got pressure pumps. So, but so I'm assuming they're running at domestic normal town pressure. But then they add substances to it. So the substance, I think because it's all about this alkalizing business, and the water tastes like shit.
Yeah.
So we've just been using the tap water, which is just tank water, and it's fine.
Yeah,
tastes like water should taste.
The in-laws have a similar system, and it just tastes terrible. I think it's an ozone, or it does something about aligning molecules or putting extra oxygen in or something.
It's like, why complicate something? It's really simple. Just get a bloody tank and just
take the nasties out and then get on with it.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've got that system runs well, but it's based on having large pipes.
Yeah, right.
That's how you get the flow rate. Like it goes out to garden taps and whatnot. Not that I try not to use.
So sorry, I might have missed a bit there. So the variable speed pump runs on large pipe?
No. The gravity fed system. So there's two systems.
Yeah.
So we've got a gravity feed which runs on all inch pipe, which is pretty good in terms. I found you don't actually need pressure to fill a jug. What you need is flow rate. So if you don't have the pressure, then you just up the pipe and you get the flow rate, and it fills a glass in the same amount of time. So
but it's only when you try it. Well, I mean, pressure is a problem when you've got particular apertures which are designed to take a particular amount of pressure.
And it's a problem when you've got appliances that require a certain minimum pressure to operate the solenoid, which I've found.
Exactly.
So our washing machine, the hot needs pressure, and the hot water service. Well, the hot water service needs pressure to operate because it's not a thermosiphon system. It's just a typical.
So how are you managing that?
So that's on a Grundfos Scala pump, which is one of those new U-Butte German variable speed, super quiet, internal pressure tanked.
So you should be able to use that as well. Can you use that? Because variable speed pumps, I'm a bit of a fan of them. They're good. Is that something you could use in irrigation as well, or is it?
Well, I've got separate pumps. We've got two other irrigation systems. One for the little market garden plot, and then one for the greenhouse and shade house, like the raising. And they're all run on misters, so they've got separate tanks. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I recommended this to, who was Ashby. That's right, Ashby Pither. I think he was on the last Rex or one before in water. Now I can't remember now. One of the things that I recommend, because Ashby had a fairly complicated system that he'd inherited when he bought this property. And so what I said to him, because he was trying to explain it to us just like you are now, and it only goes so far. So what I said to him, can you do some sort of schematic of the water design? Because that way then we'll be able to understand it a bit better. And if there's anything that we can help you with, well, you've got to understand what you're trying to help with before you can help. So what I'd probably put to you is, and this might help you too in any case, is actually make a schematic up of your water system and pay attention to putting, and you might have to do this on a larger sheet of paper even, just so that you can put the details in, such as what are the pressure rates required at positions. So as you come to a terminal, like a solenoid, or as you come to an inlet, then there might be inlet pressure required by whatever that device is, whether it's a
Mm.
sprinkler head or whether it's a solenoid or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then, but then also what the relative heads are.
Yeah.
That sort of thing really helps because then you can sort of visualize the connection between everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require any scale either. It's also because it's a schematic. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
That
Ashby was a fairly active participant in the
a lot of
program, if
posts.
I remember, which is always useful, and that makes it harder for me to find his task work or whatever he did. But it was pretty interesting.
I'd probably do that for the irrigation system once we're set up.
Yeah.
The house system I'm happy with. It's got to be rejigged because this new tank.
Okay.
And I'm on top of all of that stuff.
Okay. All right. Sweet.
Myself. Well, the question I had for you was I've just been investigating with not much success getting a much smaller header tank on a much higher stand.
Right.
So I'm looking at a stand, kind of like a windmill sort of frame.
Yes. Yeah.
And
there's plenty of those about. I've noticed that there's become a surplus of those in rural Australia as a result, as a direct outcome of the invention and uptake of the pressure pump. There's tons of them. You drive past farms all the time and you see all shapes and sizes of them. So I haven't investigated on the, on the gum trees or whatever.
That would be.
There's a lot of them around.
So I'm just wondering if you've seen in your travels or with working with people. I know I've seen them in old photos, and you see them old farms, an old corrugated tank up on a stand.
Yeah.
I'm sort of looking at something maybe about 500 litres just for household.
Oh, okay.
Something small, like I'd have to buy a second.
What's the primary purpose for it?
The primary purpose of that is to supply mains pressure water to the house and surrounds, not for irrigation, because they're all separate systems. This is just for.
Well, I would think that 500 litres is tiny, and I reckon you're probably going to struggle to find a tank stand that will be for a tank that small. It's most people back in the day, what they would have is they'd have something like a 10,000 litre corrugated iron tank up on a stand, because they pump up to it say once a week or whatever they did, depending on the size of the family, and then that would give them that the water that they'd need for whatever period. So I think you're probably going to struggle to find anything. Now, that said, the range of size and diameters of tanks, or shapes and diameters of tanks, has changed radically in the last 15 to 20 years. So you've got a lot more what I would call sort of tall boy tanks now, narrower diameters, but a lot taller, because they're that's mainly been as an outcome of the drought policies that occurred after the 2000s droughts, when in Victoria in particular, this Victorian government started to give rebates and require new housing developments have one of a few water saving options in order to be able to get a building permit. And one of those was, you either had to have you either had to have a grey water system or you had to have rainwater tanks. And so that fed the industry with a whole lot of new tank orders. And so as a result of that, you can get any number of different shapes and sizes of tanks, which you couldn't previously. And so you may well be able to get a tank. You may well be able to get a tank now, which is a lot narrower, which is of the same volume. But I really don't think you'd be able to get a tank stand that's going to, because it's hardly worth it. You know what I mean? It's like 500 litres or even 1,000 litres popping up there.
I think, I don't know. In my thinking and the use of the system here, like we've got this is purely for household supply. So
no, there's no dispute your system. What I'm saying, it's unlikely you'll be able to get a second-hand tank stand that will fit your purpose.
Yeah.
In the day, you weren't doing it that way, right? So you might have to make your own.
Well, that's been done before.
Yeah, well, it's not hard. I mean, it's either tubular steel or angle iron, whichever way you want to go. It's not and for that sort of, if you're only putting 500 to 1,000 liters up there, that's a pretty.
Well, that's the thing.
The spec's not that great.
The stand that I built for this tank takes 7 tons.
Yeah.
So you think how many things in life are rated to 7 tons that haven't been ticked off by XYZ council engineer, etc.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's going up quite high.
Yeah.
So, and our water usage is about 150 litres a day. So if it was 500 litres, that's 3 or 4 days, say 2 to 3 days of water, and then pumping under solar during the daytime. So I just have a float valve and a timer that, it only lets the pump operate between daylight hours, and then
it's very easy then.
It would sit by itself. So my reason
it's probably just on the construction. I'll probably, given that your location, subtropical, get a bit of cyclonic wind stuff, I'd probably go with, and if you're going high, I'd probably go with tubular steel, not angle iron.
Yeah. Well, weight for weight, tubular is
yeah, of course.
It is a lot more expensive to buy tube, but actual angle is quite expensive up here as well. But I guess coming back to my original question was if you've known of any prefabricated systems around that size, or seen them on farms, or what sort of. I know that
prefabricated tank stands.
Oh, they're available, but they're for much bigger sizes. And
I've not, like I said, I've not seen anything, because you're sort of, what you're talking about is extraordinary. It's, in the sense that people aren't doing, because the pressure pump has become so pervasive as a technology that nobody's doing header tanks anymore. It's just. Well, they are, but it's very, very rare by comparison. Everyone's doing pressure pumps, which I don't agree with, but,
No. Well, I have hearing sensitivity, so I can't have a pump coming on, off,
oh, man, they drive me
nuts.
They drive me mental. I can't
being able to walk into the kitchen, open a tap, and it's silent and there's no electricity involved. It's a beautiful thing. So even when you're on top of the hill. So I was adamant that we were still going to have a gravity-fed system, even though we're at the top of the block.
Yeah.
So hence the reason for putting in the stainless tank. But it was a pretty nervous time when we were filling it, because it was on an existing concrete slab where a tank had been before, but I built it up as high as I could, and it's right up next to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And 7 tons on a stand, you're thinking, what's going to happen to the subsoil? And
if you've got the right size concrete footings which are displacing the weight effectively. I mean, obviously. Well, I should say obviously. I mean, there's engineering principles that go into that, and if you're a bit sus on things, then you hire an engineer.
I'm an engineer. I am an engineer.
Well, there you go. So you hired your own engineer, but you know the principles.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I just was wondering if you'd seen things about that size, because I've sort of struck out. I haven't done full searching yet, but the tank stand manufacturers, like you say, they're putting 50,000 litres, 100,000 litres in the air sometimes.
Well, that's what it's tended to shift to now, because that's the other thing that's happened in this period since pressure pumps came in and tank stands went out, by and large, like domestic tank stands, you might say. Tanks have also got a lot larger. Especially metal tanks with the advent of bladders, and just better manufacturing technologies and all the rest of it. So, and economies of scale. I would look. There may well be someone. I had a look a couple of years ago at tank stands for some client, but I can't recall anything being that small. I know that in places like, as you travel through Asia, it's not unusual to see tank stands that are made of concrete block or something like the Besser block or whatever.
Mm.
But they're usually only 1,000 to 2,000 litres that they're putting up there. But that's limited because that's the size of tanks that they have there. And usually what people are doing there is that in a lot of villages and towns across Asia, you only get water. Town water only is on for an hour a day. And so you pump up. So you use that pressure to pump up to your storage, and then that gives you your water for a day or two. So there's all sorts of different ways that people skin that cat. But no, I have not seen anything. It might be worth having a bit of a look. But if you do find anything, let us know.
Yeah, as you say, I think it will be a fabrication job and pouring foundations. But I just think at 6 to 8 metres, it's getting pretty high with the sort of winds.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I'm concerned about, your wind loading.
Yeah.
For sure. And you're probably better having a smaller one up there in the sky than
that was my other thought. If I'm putting half a ton, it's going to, it'll still crush someone, but I won't crush them as bad.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll be strapping it down, and you'll do all the safety stuff. I mean, correct.
Yeah, and it'll be away from the house somewhere, like it won't be in a traffic area, and you wouldn't go standing under it in a cyclone. So.
No. You're going to be down the pub for that.
Standing here on guard. I think the workshop's the safest place we've got. All right. Yeah,
somewhere.
All right, very good. Thanks, mate.
All right. Well, I don't know if I've been much help, but I think that's probably the DIY route. Just because you love a good project as well. So.
Well, I've got a few.
Yeah, no, I gathered that. All right, mate. Good to talk.
Cheers.
Hopefully you get a nice roof cleaning drop that gets a bit of subsoil moisture, and the next drop that comes fills that new tank of yours.
Yes, thanks, mate.
No worries. All the best. Okay. Who else have we got? No hands up. Hands up in the air. Who's that song, love? Who had that song? Noiseworks? I can't remember. All right. I'm going to go with, I've got here Colin. Now, Colin, I'm going to go with Colin because it's very late in the night for him. So go for it, Colin.
How's it going?
Oh, very well, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good. Question is, over here, rainwater harvesting from like roofs and from your roof and stuff isn't overly common. It's not very common, not to my knowledge anyway.
No, I imagine that.
People do. That's the wrong Colin. So it was just kind of, what do you guys do with do you use rainwater in the house for actually drinking? Or is it just grey water?
Yeah, we do. So, the reason for the rainwater thing here in Australia is that a lot of we don't generally have, for a range of reasons, a lot of properties don't have good spring water supplies, so groundwater supplies.
Yep.
And often our water, because of the age of our continent, a lot of our water is filled with suspended solids. And often salt, because of the age and position of our continent, which it's just had a lot of rain on it, which has got salt in it, and that's all penetrated into the groundwater. So a lot of groundwater supplies are not really fit for drinking water, and they've often been really deep, and so there's been that. And with the advent of corrugated iron, which was a really great invention for places like Australia. It meant that, like roofing materials, you could take a dray and a few horses or bullocks, and you could carry a whole roof worth of material out, and then you could carry around a machine which would roll and curve the iron, the corrugated iron, into a shape, which could then be riveted together and sealed with a bit of tar or bitumen. And you've got yourself a big rainwater tank. So corrugated iron really was a bit of a game changer on that front. Previous to that, it was rocks and cement and all that sort of and bricks, all of which, when you're out in the bush, are difficult to obtain.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of it's has been historically used for all purposes, but predominantly for drinking water. Yeah.
See, over here, you can it is quite common in a lot of rural areas, especially like up in the Highlands, to have a groundwater supply.
Yeah.
Because actually the water up there is pretty high quality.
It's spectacularly good. Yeah, I agree. It's great.
Here where I am, we're right at the bottom of where the glacier used to be, effectively, right on the west coast. So I don't know what groundwater would be like here. It's not something I've investigated much. But
so where do you get your water from at the moment?
At the moment, it's the municipal water supply.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that in itself, there's an often untalked about compound which has found its way into municipal supplies. It's called chloramine or chloramine.
Well, this is it. Our supply was chlorinated.
Yes.
And then in February this year, they changed to chloramination.
Yeah.
But they didn't really say much about it. They just kind of did it, and it really created a stink. But I find now when I have showers and stuff, I can get really like sore skin from it. It's nasty. It's ammonia. It's nasty shit. But when you read over here about taking rainwater and using it, they literally say, "Don't drink rainwater, you'll die." Like that's literally it. It's a load of shit. But the problem is, like, because of that, no one here does it because the general consensus is it's really unsafe. There's bugs, shit on the roof.
Town water and that chloramine shit over time.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously they're doing lethal doses.
Yeah, I know. That's what they tell everyone. Well, to be fair, you can go on, like I was on the other day, and they do testing every so often, and then you can check your region, and they give you the testing, and I mean, there's fucking aluminium in it as well and stuff like that. Look, 200 micrograms per litre is what they generally get here.
I know. Look, don't. A lot of people in Australia, because, see, I'll speak for my state here in Victoria. See, up until about the 1960s, 50% of Victorians, which is the most densely populated state, were rural. So they grew up on farms because Victoria is the most productive agricultural state by quanta of money. So we produce more productive agricultural value than any other state. But we're the second smallest state in Australia. And so 50% of the people in Victoria just 30 or 40 years ago grew up in the country. And so all country people have rainwater, and that's what you've grown up with. And so when those people moved into town, they started to drink town water, which was chlorinated and blah, blah. And they went, oh, shit, this is terrible stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's all what you're used to, And so a lot of people that moved into the cities, which is a natural pathway of industrialisation, they started to have rainwater tanks. And whether it be, there might be a 1,000 or 2,000 litre tank, which was just catching the water off your house, and then people would plumb in an extra tap into their kitchen. And so they'd only use the town water to wash themselves, to water their gardens, and to for all of the non-potable uses, and then for the and wash the dishes and whatnot. But they'd use their drinking water and cooking water was predominantly out of the tanks. And so here, as a result of that, policy and practice has been quite different around rainwater use. So if you go to the United States, it's similar to where you are. There's a whole prejudice against using rainwater, and I've met a lot of people who said, "What? You can drink rainwater? I didn't know you could do such a thing," because it's just never been in their purview, So it's it's a lot of what you're used to.
I was listening to one of the lectures online from Jeff Lawton, and he said whenever he leaves Australia and he gets onto water and he talks about harvesting rainwater and drinking it, he says like straight away your hands will go up. He says always in America and like probably here as well. He said the hands will go up, and he says before you ask, no, we don't filter it, and yes, it's safe to drink. He said it's just all people are concerned about elsewhere because they really do. Over here they really don't want you drinking it. But I suppose my bigger question is what do you what's the best practice for taking rainwater? Do you have a certain amount of it run off first and then capture?
Yeah. If you look at if you check out the water chapter of the Agrarian's Handbook, there's actually a section in there on rainwater harvesting off your roof and a variety of different pathways that you can do. See, the biggest concerns that I would have with rainwater, because you still, we live in a world where there are pollutants, right? So we've got to be concerned about that. So where we are, for example, to the west of us, there's large areas of industrial agriculture, and they're all using, and they're using the full weight of novel chemistry in doing so, in managing those areas, right? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of, or literally, actually probably close to millions of hectares of land, which are under cereal cultivation and horticulture cultivation, and they're using all of the full array of novel chemistry that's used, right? Now, of course, that stuff, when it rains, is sometimes going to be in the air, depending on and most of our rain comes from the west, so, we're going to get it. So some of the things that people do is they have what's called first flush systems, and that's a primary defense. And what that means is that you sacrifice some of the rain that you get off your roof in order to clean your roof and your gutters, and that water goes into the environment, right? Just as it would ordinarily, right? So you don't take that. And they will generally work on some sort of flow. So often what they work on is, you might fill up a reservoir, which takes the first lot of that rain. And then when that reservoir fills up, then it actuates some type of valve mechanism, which can be as simple as a ball that floats up and down, to having something more elaborate. And then that will, once that reservoir fills with a predetermined amount of water, then that will make an assumption that your roof is now clean or cleaner, and then that water will make its way into your tank or your system.
Yeah, that's the most common one I've seen. Even
that's pretty common. And
it's literally just an extra bit of pipe, and they just make the pipe long enough that by the time it's filled up, depending on the size of the roof, it's done the job. Yeah,
you can play all of that stuff. So you can have a wet line which has a pipe, which has a valve at the bottom of it, and a wet line is actually, if you look at, actually I'll pull it up on the screen here. Where are we? I don't think I'm that far out of it here. If we look at the book, just bear with me for a minute. I think I might have to reopen this. Hang on. Where are we? I've got my... here we go. All right. Filter systems, water. Tanks. I think 211, I think. Let's try there. No, 211. So I'm just looking to get familiar with where everything is here. Maybe in treatment. I might just have to flick through the images here because I can't recall, because I'm still getting familiar with this chapter and where it all is when I navigate through it. Even though, here it is. So it's on page 184.5. You can see that there. So there's a couple of systems that there's one, and we've got this whole schematic here in page 184, which talks about the range of systems that you might have. So starting from some sort of leaf guard, like a leaf mesh guard, in which when so you can buy all of these things now in places like Australia, or you can make them just out of sheet out of steel sheet or stainless steel sheet or whatever you've got, gal sheet. And so what you have is the gutter comes down and then it comes over an angled screen, a mesh screen, and so any leaves that have caught there, then they fall off, and then that water goes into what might be a first flush filter. And that first flush filter, if you look at the diagram on the next page, is that you might have some sort of like a PVC or pipe in which there's a floating ball inside, and that ball comes up and fills that hole. And so so that will fill up first, and then once it's full, it'll rise the ball up, block that, and then the water will run into your system. That's one way. We haven't got it drawn here, but another way you can do it, which is the way I often will do it with people, because I'm not worried about all this stuff so much, is that this is what's called a wet line or a wet pipe. So you've got a dry pipe or a wet pipe. And with a wet pipe, you've got a sealed PVC or otherwise pipe, which goes underground, not overhead. And it goes underground, and you can put a tap right here at any point here. And so and I think it's advisable anyway, because it's important to, in dry times, to let the water out of this, because otherwise the water will sit in this pipe. Yeah. So it's important when it's dry to let that out. But that's an active system. This one here is probably a better system if you want a real passive system, because there's no capacity for water to stay. That pipe will stay dry all the time. And this system here is completely passive as well, in that it'll just work at, solid state, it'll just work. So, but that said, you'll have to drain this off. Now, most people in Australia all they have is the overhead pipe, the dry pipe, and it just goes straight into the tank. Now, the other part to that makes that, I suppose, feasible health-wise, is that you don't have the outlet at the bottom of the tank. Because what happens is it's the sediment, which is, well, there's a couple of things that occur that's of concern. One is the pH of the water. That's number one. And number two is the depth of sediment. So if the pH of the water is, particularly as it heads towards being acid, and look, I haven't ever experienced water that's 5.5 pH or less personally, but that's when, aluminium becomes soluble, and it's when a lot of the compounds that are of concern, that's when you're going to get that. Now, there's ways to combat that. You can just get a big block of limestone and pop that in there, and that'll be the canary in the tank as well, because if you have drinking water and it's got bubbles in it, if it's carbonated, then you probably got a bit of a problem, because that limestone block is not going to dissolve when it's basic. Right? Yeah. When the pH is basic, it's only going to just start to dissolve and release the carbonate in it, when the water starts to become more acid. Now, in your position in the world, I doubt that's going to be a problem, because you don't have major industry with sulfurous.
Well, I've not looked much into the air quality here. Certainly from some basic places that give you a generic air pollution figure. Here's meant to be very clean.
Yeah, I would have thought
southwesterly wind, and we're only 10 miles from the coast, and there's not. It's mainly just like small towns.
I think you've probably got really good quality water then, I'd say. I mean, and the air that comes from the beautiful island of Ireland just across your shores is always.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more just like,
you're not going to give me that one, are you,
mate? So I take it then, because what they say here is if you're going to use rainwater for drinking, the rule is you absolutely must have a UV filter, and you absolutely must have a particle filter.
Yeah.
For me,
look, and I get that, because they're trying to protect human health.
Of course.
So I get that, but I mean, you can get. I could see that you could quite easily go and build a system, and is someone going to come and knock on your door and say, "Hey, I want to check out your rainwater drinking system?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what. To be fair, I don't even know what the regulations are regarding, you know, putting a rainwater system in and then using it in the house. Like, I mean, if there is regulations against it, the chances of anyone ever actually saying, "Oh, we want to come check your water because we know you've got a grey water system and you're drinking it," like, I mean, that's probably never even going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's a risk you might have to take. The other thing is too for you is, well, you're probably going to have to build your own tank, because you probably can't just go on, like here in Australia, you can buy I mean, I could show you right now, you can just go down to any store, you know, any rural, like if you've probably got rural produce stores where you are. Well, here in Australia, if you go to them, there's a stock of tanks and you can get 50,000, 30,000, 10,000 litre.
Here it's very much
just put them on your trailer and drive them home, you know, it's simple.
Yeah, nobody would build them here because there's no such thing as rural in Scotland. You know, it's not a big enough country for you to be truly rural. You can get most things from someplace, you know.
But there's not the call for them either. So
no.
So I would think you're probably best, and I'll tell you what, anyway, the water quality that comes from a ferro cement tank is really high, because the different tank compound, or the materials that are used for different tanks for drinking water, do impart a different flavour on that water. And I've always found that ferro cement and stainless steel are my preferred materials. Now, stainless steel is going to be probably expensive and difficult for you.
Well, for us, we're putting up like an agricultural building next year, and the roof size is going to be about 470 square meters.
Oh wow, that's substantial.
So we're going to be able to easily. I mean, we get like 1,000 millimeters easily a year. You know,
so that's 400 that's 475,000 liters you're going to get off.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get 500,000. So, and the ironic thing is, we probably we won't need a huge amount for the ground because the rain's pretty constant all throughout the year here. So you don't need that. You know, you'll easily have a lot of surplus water in there. You know, but it's just trying to wade through the crap in this country of don't do this, don't do that, you know, and you know.
But when are you gonna vote those POMs out there? That'll be the first thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
Then you've only got the Europeans to worry about, and they don't come to Scotland.
Oh God! Oh, I tell you, man, we don't know what the fuck's happening here. Now it's an absolute.
No, I do. That's why I'm needling you. So
yeah. So she was yesterday. She was nearly out of power yesterday. You know, she was getting a vote of no confidence.
Yeah, no. Well, that's it.
We're just going to shit over here. Plus, their agriculture might collapse. It might all go to pot. You never know.
Agriculture doesn't matter in the UK anyway because it's only 0.8% of GDP. So
I know.
It's just nostalgic landscape management for nobles. Yep. Yeah.
I like to think. I was thinking here at first, build it as a business. And I think I'll just build it for the apocalypse. You know, when that happens, I'll just protect myself. You know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks for that information.
Yeah. Well, I think certainly have us help you because it's something that obviously Aussies have got a fair bit of expertise with, and myself included. So so keep us in touch on what your plans are. Plus,
I just want to get away from this shit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
It's really downhill. You know, it's fucking.
We first heard about this chloramine stuff when we're in Portland, Oregon, a few years ago, and some people we were staying with, they were up in arms about it because they were doing. They were really active gardeners, and they were using the soil food web sort of processes that Dr. Elaine Ingham promotes. Yeah. And of course, because of that, and they were both scientists, and they both had their own microscope, so they were doing all of their own testing of their own soil microbiology, and very regularly, and they were doing it of their composts and all sorts of things, and they noticed there was a radical change in the volume of microbiology, and they were going, "What the fuck's going on here? You know, why are we got all these deaths going on in this in their material, in their soil and in their compost. And then they went back through it and they were banging their heads, and then ultimately they found out it was the chloramine. Because chloramine is the reason why they're doing it is it's super effective, because chlorine doesn't last for very long. And that's, anyone knows that you can, if you want to get rid of chlorine, you just leave it in the open for 24 hours and it dissipates.
It dissolves off, it just evaporates. Yeah.
Whereas chloramine or chloramine, it doesn't. And so it's been an absolute economic boon for municipalities, because they're able to they don't have to buy as much chlorine.
Well, that's basically what they said in their letters here was, we're doing it to extend, the lengths to which we can guarantee safe drinking water effectively. They've
spiel everywhere. So there's obviously a few manufacturers of this stuff around the world whose PR departments have sold them a spiel, and they're all using it.
When they're sitting there, when I looked at it and they said basically when I looked up the process, one of the first things I found was a group in America who basically just go around, acting against this, activists for it, and they're showing you some of the side effects in people and their skin, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The skin's the main thing, it seems.
Burning, it's horrible.
It's shite.
So, and plus we use it right now. We just use it because we're not technically a business yet at the farm. We can use it and not get metered for it. Yep. So we've got it plugged into the irrigation in the polytunnel, and we've used it on there. And like you say, I've always been wary of it's probably having such a bad impact on the land. Not that you need it too often. I mean, last year was particularly hot, but normally it's wet enough that you don't actually need to water stuff outdoors that much.
What did it get up to? 28 or something?
Well, no. Honestly, you joke about that. I don't think we even saw 28 this year. Genuinely, it really doesn't get. I think there might have been a day where it was 27. Where we were possibly a peak, there's been a lot of comedians making a lot of jokes about it, it is quite funny. It's nothing to write home about.
It's all what you used to, though.
The joke is they call it taps off weather, which is just taking top off, said in a Scottish accent, taps off, because all the young people walk about with no tops on, just half naked, going, this is great.
Well, that's it. That's what they say in Ireland. There's 2 times you stop work in Ireland, and it's when it snows and when the sun comes out. So.
There's anything all pasty white and ginger,
That's right. So, I think let's keep talking about your system, because and it does come back to, Colin, like it always does, to how much water you need for particular purposes. So I'll keep hammering that one home. But I think that's really important to get a good assessment on that. Because
I'll look at all the, I'm just about to get into looking at catchments and seeing if there's a possibility to put dams on here or not.
That's all the stuff, I think that
to do all the outside stuff and maybe just use the tank for literally and like house water,
Well, that I think. You've got a couple of possibilities. The dam water, if you've got the capacity to build dams, well, then that's something that you might be able to use for irrigation water in your polytunnels and whatnot. But for all of your internal water, internal use for washing your clothes and yourselves and for drinking and cooking and whatnot, then I don't see in your rainfall that you would have any problem at all being able to not have that supplied by a tank. It's just that you need to work out what your daily consumption is going to be, and then when you let us know that, then we can help you work out what the size tank will be. And, fortunately, you've got the annual rainfall to be able to fill anything really. It's then going to be all right. Well, where do you situate that tank and building it? And one of the things, just to tie this one up, is one of the things that we advise people, if they've not built with ferro cement before, is to build something small as a test, and then, and even if it's 1,000-litre tank or something like that, just so you get familiar with the material and the way to handle it and all the rest of it, and then from that, and I've built quite a few of them. I built when I was living and working in Vietnam, I trained people. It was one of the things that we did with our project. I trained people how to build ferrocement tanks for domestic use and for industrial use. So, yeah, I've got a fit. That's something I know a fair bit about.
Yeah, no, my brother's a builder and an eco builder at that, so I'll ask him about that.
Yeah, great.
See if he...
Well, even better, talk to him, ask him if he's got an access to a shotcrete machine.
All right, okay, yeah.
Because if he's got a shotcrete machine, it's going to make your life so much easier. No, you won't be on the trail.
Yeah. You can make it a lot quicker.
Oh yeah. That's much better.
Find out how good your plastering skills are when you've got no water in the tank. You filled it up 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, good to hear your voice. We'll keep at it.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, cheers,
thanks,
Dan. Take care.
Hooroo. All right. Who else have we got there? We've got Ray. Unmute. Good morning, Ray.
Morning, Darren. How are you?
And Samantha. Samantha's got her own identity today, I see.
Yeah. I'm actually not far from your place this morning, Darren.
Oh, that's right. Where are you?
Oh, I'm at Stuart and Tammy's place.
Oh, cool.
Eganstown.
Oh, lovely. Well, we're bloody up in near Byron Bay at the moment, so far away. Did you get much rain down there?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, I'm not sure how much, but rained a bit yesterday and last night.
Oh, nice. I know some parts missed out, so yeah, that's good to hear. Well, say good day to them both for me.
Shall do.
So you're using their internet this morning?
That I am indeed, yes.
Oh, good. Oh, will be especially nice then. All right. So what do you got for us, mate?
So we've got our most promising water supply, or our most promising catchment, is just off to the north of our property in the neighbour's place. There's I haven't actually measured it using Google Earth, but there's got to be, a 5 hectare sheet of granite.
Yeah.
That
Did we go there?
No, we didn't go there.
Yeah.
I probably should have taken you there because it is our best. Like from bone dry, 60 mils of rain and it runs.
Yeah, right.
But we've only got a tiny dam that leaks like a sieve at the bottom of it, and there's it's right on our boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no real scope to enlarge it. And I don't think we'd find clay there anyway. But from there, what I'd like to talk about is siphoning and how how far you can get away with siphoning in your experience, because
siphons, eh? Oh, yeah. Now you're talking about a topic that's fun.
Yeah, because
it's one of those things. Siphons. There's a bit of magic about siphons, and of course there isn't any, but there seems to be.
Yeah,
in their practice, and there's opinions even amongst. And it's really curious when you get engineers who have opinions, because engineers shouldn't have opinions.
No, they shouldn't have opinions. They have formulas.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's so and me not being an engineer makes it very interesting discussion. Anyway, look, you try to just describe what's the purpose of having a siphon as to say any other solution for being being the inlet, if you might say,
for being the inlet. So we don't that catchment, basically it's relatively high.
Yes.
So from where that runs into the property, we've probably got I haven't got the map in front of me because I haven't. No. I'm on the road, but we've probably got 15 or 20 meters of fall at least to our lowest point on the property.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a reason.
That's right. Just
over what distance though?
Over Over probably up to 700 or 800 meters.
Okay. Well, that's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So are you talking about, if you've got this siphon, what's that siphon going to be connected to, this dam that you're talking about?
Yeah, so connected to another storage.
Oh, so you're considering building a higher storage, right? Yep.
Well, or a lower storage.
Yeah.
So
well, I'll put it to you this way: if that storage is not that big, and so let's put it to you this way: siphons are a pain in the ass, right? And they can be, and they often are, and they usually are. So, I would advise people, if they can, to look at doing a V-shaped trench into the embankment. So get a backhoe in for, just commit to getting a backhoe or a 15-ton excavator or something like that in for the day. And I would consider putting in a lock pipe as an alternative to a siphon, because they're just so much less hassle. They don't need any priming, and especially given you don't have the kind of head that we're talking about, which is going to create a lot of suction, especially over that length.
Yeah.
And so 1.5 bar is not a lot of pressure to be playing with, and especially over 700 meters. Even with a 2-inch pipe, you're going to get a lot of friction loss over that journey.
Yeah.
So, so you might end up with, 0.6 or 7. I'm estimating, but you're not going to end up with a lot of pressure by the time you get to the end of that, right? Because of friction loss. So I would say, therefore, you'd be better off, because just for the cost of it all and the convenience, because you rely on these bloody things, right? And it's a pain in the ass when you rely on things and they don't work, and it costs you money.
Yeah.
So I would suggest you'd be better off getting a machine in, do a V shape. Now, the reason why we do a V shape cut and not a horizontal cut, a vertical cut, I should say, is because when you go and pack that material back in, you've got a greater surface area that you're packing back onto.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you do a vertical cut, and you go and pack the dirt back in there, there's very little adherence between the wall of that cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So
you
can go to a sort of a 1-to-1 cut, a 45-degree cut.
Batter, yeah.
Yeah, a batter, yep. Then, and rough it up. So, which it should, because the teeth of the bucket should rough it up a bit anyway, but make sure it's rough, and then gradually pack the material back in layers, which each layer itself, as it's put in and packed down, is roughed up, like the surface. So you'll pack it back down generally with the back of the bucket, right, to the right pressure, and you might do 20-30 centimetre layers of raw dirt, put that in, pack it down. Now, just use the teeth of the bucket to rough that up, because it'll glaze a bit.
Yep.
With the back of the bucket, and you do that and just keep packing it up, and then you'll be right. Now, the other thing that one would do, given you're probably only going to do a 2-inch or something like that, I would just get or you could do some 3-inch poly, poly or something that was a bit bigger, 63 mil as the pipe for the lock pipe, a bit more robust, bit bigger diameter. You just go to the hardware store or Bunnings or something like that and you can get rubber mat. They use it for the putting in the back of utes and stuff these days, or for standing on. But it's a rubber mat, right? And you get a hole saw and cut that to just the diameter of the pipe, and then slip that over it.
Those are baffles.
That'll be your baffles. That's a cheap and easy way, and a very effective way of making your baffles for that. And depending on the width of the base of that dam, you could probably get away with one with that diameter pipe. You could probably get away with one every 3 meters or 4 meters. So if it was a 2-inch pipe, say if you did one that was about 300 to 400 mil square, and that stuff will probably be a centimetre thick or half an inch thick, and that'll be fine. Just as long as it fits nice and snugly and tightly over it. It's not it's not a structural thing. It's a seepage thing.
Seepage, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it does. It just stops that laminar seepage around the edge of the pipe. That's all it does. So, and that's why you can use any range of different materials. But we've just found that today that's the best and easiest machine. It's because it's flexible. Like when you're packing the thing back in, you don't have when you're ramming around the pipe, you're not as liable to damage it. Polypipe's good like that too because it's just not as easily damaged as PVC.
It's PVC, yeah.
So, and you can get the larger diameters of. I mean, you
poly now.
Need a short length of poly, So,
yep.
And you can get the fittings, the reducing fittings and nipples and all of that sort of stuff these days pretty easily.
Yeah, so it's only a pretty shallow dam. I think at the deepest point it might be 1,500 deep. It really is only a puddle.
Right.
But,
well, that's something you might want to consider having a bit of a play with there as well, because if let's put another scenario to you for this particular one. Would there be a value to that dam being a header tank in itself?
No. It's not. Its value is it would be harvesting water to store in a more efficient in a dam that'd be more efficiently built. Because I mean that particular spot it's pretty rocky, so that's the other thing that with the lock pipe we might have to wiggle through and negotiate rocks that are underneath the embankment.
Well, that's true. It depends on whether lock pipes don't need to be at the full base of the dam either.
Yeah.
You might just take the top meter of water, right?
Yeah.
In fact, Yeomans, and I've done this myself, but Yeomans, when he built a number of systems, he puts on some systems he put several lock pipes in, which took different heights of water.
Yeah, right.
So so they would run dry as the water level decreased.
Yeah,
and so you could run that out laterally out to the areas sidewards of the dam wall, and so the top meter of water, if that dam was full, well then you got a meter of that water, right? And that would irrigate by gravity because a lock pipe doesn't need any pressure. It's just a complete gravity thing. It's not a pressure. It's not a pressure system. If you're doing flood irrigation, but when that's not what you're looking at. So,
from that, then you just have to make sure that no point in the pipe from there to where the water's going to was higher than the full water level.
Yeah, that's where you get the challenges. You get challenges with airlocks anyway, and so that's something you might have to look at with putting.
So you just have to put air valves.
Yeah.
Air release valves or whatever they're called at high points.
Yeah. Which is pretty straightforward. And that's usual.
Okay. And then we just need to make sure that it doesn't go over any high points.
Yeah, well you'll just have to do the due diligence on your levels as it goes through.
Yep.
Otherwise it just won't push.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to have something they're either pushing it through or sucking it through. And there's going to be a bit of air in it anyway, whatever you do.
No, that's that. I think that's our answer, Darren. Thank you very much for that. I hadn't thought of doing that. Don't know why.
Oh, well.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Oh, that's true. Every month. Oh, there's Darren. Okay, mate. Well, I appreciate that closing remark. Good on you.
I'm just trying to think.
There's still time. It's only 8 o'clock. You can come back to me later, mate.
Yeah. No, go on to someone else.
All right. Good on you. It'll come to you. Have a cup of tea and eat some whatever delights that they have at Jonai. Pretty good. I imagine.
The tucker here is pretty good.
Yeah. All right, mate. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right. Then we got Garth. Oops. Garth. There he is.
G'day, mate. Can you hear me?
G'day, mate. How are you? Yeah, I can hear you.
Not too bad. Yeah, the NBN's playing up, so we're on on the 4G. So if I cut in and out,
Oh,
you'll know
geez.
why.
Well, yeah, we'll keep this short anyway because you don't want to make Telstra any richer.
No, well, that's fine. The question I put on the Q&A was more of a generalist. In the last Rex, you mentioned how.
Oh, sorry, I haven't actually looked at that. Yeah,
no, you're right.
I'm on a small screen, so it's not.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
You were saying that the land use, the farming land is used a 15th of its.
Oh, yeah.
Of its, actual
Potential.
ability. Yeah. Probably, I'd like you to speak more to that. I suppose it's been sort of just rattling around in my head for a couple of weeks since I watched the video, and being from the meckering side of things, where we don't have any water, and we just use we've just got wheat and sheep all the way out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there potential for areas like ours to be utilised better, or were you sort of
I think absolutely.
rainfall places, or?
Well, that's what we ply our trade on. So the big thing is, I suppose, Garth, is that it's always that tension between what you can do, which is on any site there's almost endless possibilities, and what you will do and what's feasible. So with the resources that you have, and that's the underlying tension that I have with a lot of people who follow permaculture, for example. Not permaculture per se, but a lot of people who follow permaculture and their interpretation of it. What they do is they'll often look at a landscape and they will explore its full potential and then recommend that potential be realised, not realising in that it's not feasible for the people that they're working with to do that or to manage that well. And so part of my, I suppose, reality check on that is trying to talk to people like you and anybody else about, all right, well, how can we do these things feasibly socially and feasibly financially? The ecosystem feasibility is the easy one. It always is, because all ecosystems care about is biodiversity and growth, right? They can take care of themselves, and anybody can see that once they think about it. But when it comes to these being human landscapes, which demand a financial feasibility, pay our mortgages and our living costs and our rates and all the rest of it, and our social costs in terms of us not just wanting to work but do other things, or just have the time of the day period, then that's where the feasibility of all of the possibilities becomes difficult, if that makes sense. So what I would look at for you now, I'll give you an example of a pretty simple set of circumstances that might turn things. There's species out there, like I'll use the example of carob, for example, Serotonia siliqua, great plant. Now, we had a post a couple of weeks ago, I think, that Lauren put up, I think it was, on carob. I'll just put that up. Now, do you know carob trees?
Yeah, we've thrown a few in just around the property a bit, yeah.
Yep. Now, Lauren, as you can see here, Lauren put this post up, and he's in California, and he put a post up about a carob tree at their place that has become a hermaphrodite. It's a seedling. And in the chat there, he said that it produced 100 kilos of fruit or pods, and it's only 4 meters tall, right? Now, the corollary of that is that at 25 stems a hectare, which is, what's that? I think that's about 10 by 10, 10 meters by 10 meter spacing. That's 2,500 kilos of production. Now, I don't know how many cereal producers in your area are producing year on, year out 2,500 kilos of cereal every year.
No,
that would have even close to the nutritional value of a carob. right?
Mm.
So now, so what's to stop? And this is what I often put to people: what's to stop somebody setting up a little nursery on their farm, getting some old milk cartons or whatever you want to do, and then growing some carob trees, and then putting in an alley farm at 60 or 80 metre spacings of individual rows of carob trees, which you put into your wheat sheep farm. What's to stop you doing that? Now that's what I mean, about the practical integration of systems, and that's only really scratching the surface, because if we're to go any much further than that, when you've just got one or two people working on a farm, with all of the cost pressures that they have and whatnot. I mean, what I think is what we need to develop more passive systems as opposed to active systems. And carobs are a really good example of that, because the pods just drop on the ground every year and the sheep just come up and eat them.
Yeah, right.
You
Awesome.
couldn't get anything much simpler than that, right? All you have to do is put them in and don't smash into them when you're running your header or running your seeder gear, right? So for me, that's the kind of thing that I would see as a practical application of a comment like that. But then the rest of it just goes on from there. I mean, it's really up to then how much effort and energy and feasibility there is in doing more.
Yeah, because we're the small place. We've only got 100 acres, and there's certainly the plan was to, we're the recovering permaculturists. We've got the swales, so the planting of the trees along them that would be good for animal fodder and or human fodder was the plan. So I guess
still can be. I think that's
it still is the plan. I was sort of more the idea.
It sounds like you need to get a bit of a nursery on the property so that you can get that stuff happening, and maybe.
Well, that's exactly what we've done down in Esperance here. Is we've got our little nursery cranking, and we'll probably be able to grow about 5,000 trees this year. So
sweet! That's tons. Dude, that's a lot of trees to plant.
Yeah, we've done 20,000 so far in the last 3 years. So we just love it so much.
Good.
I'm sure Jamie's laughing his head off at work now. I guess the last question I'd like to ask is, given that you know a little bit about us, where would you spend your money? I guess first, like I like learning from other people's mistakes.
Yeah,
so
sure. Yeah, no.
You would have come across a whole lot of mistakes, I'm sure, in your time.
Yeah. From what I've gleaned so far of your situation, it sort of goes back to when we were talking about the keyline geography and the sort of almost redundancy of that from your perspective. As a, I think I said to you, look, don't get hung up about it, because I don't see that it's being really super important for you at this stage. I would still maintain the advice I think I gave then, which was I would invest in trying to get sorted some infrastructure that's going to allow me to run or gist some animals on the property during the growing season, so that I can get things turned around in terms of the ecosystem function, the landscape function. Because I can see, I can't recall seeing photos of your place.
If you go to you'll see. And I've certainly
so I'll just have to. Sorry if you have. All right.
There's photos in the drive of our.
Is there? Right. I'll have a look.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't recall that.
No.
Drive. So we'll just go there. My drive. Where are we? But that would, when you're not there all the time, and also when the system's at its base and you're perhaps not familiar with a lot of the systems, then I just think it's and when the system's sort of at its base and ready to make the shift, then I think that it's probably best that people just where are we going? Just just get to work on, photos. There
Photos, yep.
The people just get to work on getting their landscape function in order. And with that, and that's exactly what I thought I'd see.
Yeah, so that's in the November. All those ones are the November ones.
Yeah.
And then you get into the October ones that are a little.
Oh, that's all wild oats and shit like that. I mean, wild oats is a very palatable feed when it's younger. That's what I would be doing. Absolutely, I'd be getting a bunch of animals in there, adjust them or buy them, just do some trading. So if you've got the capital to go to the sale yards, get yourself a number so that you can sell them back to the sale yards, and put the investment into buying some Kiwi tech setup. So go to and maybe talk to some others in the area. There might be some others within the even the Rex agrarians community on the workplace who are interested in getting some Kiwi tech. So go to Kiwi tech. Actually, I'll go to their catalogue is easier. Get some Kiwi tech gear and a good energizer, which can run on a solar panel.
Yep.
And buy some sheep or cattle, but probably sheep are going to be easier or more easily accessible because you're probably more sheep. There's more sheep at the sale yards, I would say, where you are than than there would be cattle, and bang them through the place. That's
so
what I would,
you would just use them, like you would buy them just for the like if it was under the holistic stuff, then the open growing.
Yeah, just the open plan. Yeah, exactly, right. So
and then chuck them out as soon as they're
done. And you might just get some gnarly old weathers, right? You don't, and I wouldn't get lambs because A, you're going to pay too much, and B, they haven't been on the ground for long enough to be really good non-selective grazers.
Okay.
And that's what you want. You want a non-selective grazier. So because you want them to go through and basically eat every bloody thing that exists on the ground and then shit it out and pee it out and move off and get your nutrient cycling sorted and basically get your ecological succession of your grassland marching in the direction that you want it to go in. And your carbon levels starting to march in the way that you want it to go and all of that. So I can't think of a better way really of being able to do that, given given where you are and the ecosystem that you're working with. I can't think of a better way of doing it.
Awesome.
You go to the other end of this, and the Permi sort of dreaming on this which is where you get the sort of greening in the desert scenario. And notice never any figures have been used about how much any of that cost. But you're talking about
how much is actually being produced as well.
Yeah, well, there's that. Look, it's great stuff, but I'm just putting this here as you might say, the polar alternative process. You're talking about a huge investment in trees. You're talking about labour that you've got to have on site to manage the whole process of establishment and then post-establishment management, which is always necessary for successful establishment. And then you've got all of the irrigation set up. You've got and all of the mulch. Well, where the hell are you going to get all of the mulch that you need?
No, we don't. Yeah,
well, of course you don't. So you go back to the practical end of this whole question, which is much more incremental, and that is, all right, well, we're going to use the carbon that's in the sky that's going to grow green grass or green plants. We're going to then put some animals on there so it doesn't all oxidize like it has currently. I mean, that's what we've seen there. It's all standing, dry, carbon ready to enter the atmospheric load, and let's get it into the ground. So that's going to be a lot, and at worst you'll come out more or less breaking even, because those weathers, they're either going to just go into going to go into the meat supply, or they're going to be brought back to you about the same price. Right? So I gave similar advice to I think he's on here. Oh, another gent who's he's not on here today. who's close by to us here in Victoria, because he had a very similar situation right at the base of starting point, trying to get a system going, got similar objectives to you, I think, etc., and on a similar scale landscape. And I said to him, look, let's just get the base sorted. And then once you get the base sorted, then that gives you a whole range of options in terms of, because once you get the soil surface covered, which is one thing, and once you get rain actually infiltrating as its first choice, and once you get a bit more, even 0.5% of carbon increase in your soil, that's going to be a quanta of difference as far as the amount of water that's stored on your landscape and all of the rest of it. And once you do all of that, well, then you'll be on the march, and it'll, if it costs you very little, or if it's close to cost neutral, well, that's great. And what'll happen then?
Awesome.
Then what'll happen is when you go and plant those trees, they're going to have a much better chance of success, of course. And you know how much effort you put into growing the trees and then planting them, as well as anybody. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole sheep rotational open growing stuff, are you thinking, like, what have the results have you seen? Sort of like 5 years or 3 years? Or?
Look, it will depend on what rain comes out of the sky. But I would think what I've seen with my own circumstances and others, and when I say my own circumstances with clients that we've worked with, we're talking about 1 or 2 years of.
Okay.
Grasslands are one of the great things about grasslands is how responsive they are. They're by nature floristically diverse, and they're also, and this is the biggest point about grasslands, is that they're made up of complete opportunists. And you see that from year to year, because if you pay attention, you'll see that if you were to pay attention to the floristic makeup, the species makeup of your grassland from year to year, based on the type, quantity, and timing of rainfall that you have.
Yeah, it does change.
And the activities that led up to that point, you're witnessing incredible variation. And it's the kind of variation you don't see in forests at all. Right? So, because forests are made up of very woody plants, just don't have the capacity, because they're already woody and they've already occupied. They don't have whereas grasses are completely different organisms. They're much more responsive to environmental change, and that's why I think they're very much like humans in that way, and I think that's why we've had such a close relationship with them for so long. Is that we're an incredibly adaptable creature, and we adapt to circumstances every day as a result. So it pays to sort of team up with something that's pretty like ourselves, really.
Yeah.
At least initially, whilst building the capital, because I look at tree crops as being capital.
Yeah. Okay.
So
brilliant.
Yeah, let's keep talking about that. But your window of planning is going to be, let's say, probably you want to have sheep hit the ground probably in June, July next year, I reckon.
Yeah. Yep.
That's about by the time you get your first rains, you've got a bit of growth. And growth, like, you don't put them on when you get your first growth. You wait a couple of months until you get up enough till you get to the sort of third leaf stage, and that's when you want to bring the animals in, and then rotate them through, and if you're lucky, you might get enough rain to rotate them through again, and that's going to be part of the. So I would invite you in your discussions with us to work through your grazing plan and try and do as best you can on work out what quantity of sheep. So it's really going to be a quantity of sheep that you think.
Yeah. Yeah, we have no idea what.
Yeah, well, that's right. But
all that.
One of the things that you'll be able to do, even with your dry standing matter that you've got now, is get some sort of estimation as to height and species. Because one thing that you've got in your advantage at this time of year is that you can identify the species that you have it's hard to identify species if you don't know them when they're in the leaf stage. Most plants are identified by their flowers and their seeds. So you've got a whole lot of winter active grasses which are now standing dead stems. Well, they're easy to ID. So from that, you should also be able to go, okay, I can also do a dry matter yield. So you can do a clip test on, because they're going to be dry, right? So so you can do a clip test. So cut a square meter down and weigh it. Right? Okay. And then once you weigh it, then we've got so we weigh it and we know what species it is, or they are. Then you can sort of reverse engineer back and say, all right, well, let's say we're getting 2,000 kilos of dry matter per hectare. 2,000 kilos will feed X number of animal units based on the metabolic energy that's afforded from those species. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Because the diet of animals is based on the metabolic energy rate, so ME, which is calories, basic kilojoules of energy that are produced by that particular plant, and the volume of that. Right? Some plants are pumpernickel, some plants are white bread.
Yep.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay. So let's work through that over the coming months, and by the time you hit the ground, then you'll be ready to go down to the sales. You have to get yourself a good sheep man's hat, of course, a pastoralist, probably the one you'll get.
I kind of stick out in the farming communities a bit, mate.
That's what Johnny Howard used to wear, a Cooper pastoralist, and it was always quite amusing. All right.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Darren.
No worries,
that's awesome.
No worries. All the best to you.
Yeah, cheers.
Okay, Dylan.
Hey there.
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Oh, I can't complain. Where are you hailing from?
I'm over in Los Angeles.
Well, that's a very good sheep growing area, not Los Angeles, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm slowly learning about that.
What can I help you with today, mate?
Yeah, I'm talking to you from actually the middle of the city still. I'm on just a 13,000 square foot property. Mm-hmm. Although I'm in the class because I'm definitely planning on getting some more land in the near future.
Good on you.
And I'm currently redesigning I'm applying the whole platform to this property as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I am trying to get the contour. I was curious is everyone putting the contours on their map from a drone survey that they've taken?
No. Look, there's a variety of different ways that people are cracking that nut. Just to pedal back for a moment, do you have a target property that you're working on for the REX program as a study property, or?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm applying it to where I live right now here in the city. I'm doing a bunch of remodeling and landscaping right now, and so I'm applying it on a small scale to.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, that's going to be fun because I suppose most of our stuff is based on stuff of a larger scale.
I'm also. Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Well, yeah, I'm also in the process of beginning a land search for a much larger acreage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look at where you are now. So, where you are now, is there much variation in the shape of the property in the landscape over its entirety?
No, there is there is a slight slope, but there's not a lot of variation.
Yeah. So, see, on a site that size, you may be able to get maps off the municipality. There might be a bit of LiDAR stuff floating around. So that would be my first. So go to you in Los Angeles, whatever the county is. Do a search for their GIS department and see what data there is, and maybe give them a call and say, I'm after some LiDAR data, which there should be. I would say there would be good LiDAR data of Los Angeles. And then once you get that, ask them what resolution is that data, and they will tell you it'll be a measurement per pixel, right? And that's
Right.
that's the sort of language that we're talking here. So if you can get, let's say, 1 foot per pixel or 2 feet per pixel or even 3 or 4 feet per pixel, but particularly if you're getting less than 4 feet per pixel, which is about 1 meter per pixel, then we're in the game. If you're getting more than that on an urban property or a suburban property of that scale, I don't know that that's going to be much use to us, because the resolution of the pixels is just too great to generate a contour map of any value.
Okay.
The other alternative to you is to do a drone-based survey. Drone-based surveys you can use, but you will have to establish some, in order for the drone-based survey to be accurate, you would need to establish at least 4 control points. I think it's a minimum of 4 control points. It may well be more. Just let me check on that. Where are we? What's it called? Drone deploy.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my follow-up question, because I just got a drone, because that was one of the things that attracted me to the program as well. Learning how to do all that and
sure.
upload it and stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, in here we are. So in the drone deploy support there, I just can't remember, because I've never had the situation where I've had to look at a minimum, because usually I'm working on quite large properties, so I've not had to worry about it. So I just don't have that in my mind. Yeah, you need a minimum. Yeah, so you need a minimum of 4 GCPs per. So I'd recommend you have a read of this article, Dylan, just so you get your head across what's going on there. I'll just pop that in the chat here. So have a read of that article, and that will help you understand that process better. Perfect. Now, the difficulty of this process, however, is that you need the kind of surveying kit which will give you the GCPs, and that's probably going to be a greater challenge for you. So you need something like an RTK GPS. Now, and we've got those. If you look at the geography chapter, we've got some information on that in. If you go to page 132 of the geography section or chapter, there's a discussion there on survey equipment and RTK survey equipment. So you would probably need that. So in order to be able to get the sort of accuracy that you want. Now, the other question I would add to go further from that is, what's the need here? Because if you go and have the expense of doing a RTK, or hiring an RTK system, or hiring someone to do it for you for the sake of 4 points, it might cost you $1,000, right? Let's say it costs you $1,000 to do that. Then what's the value of that information? What are you going to use it for? What sort of systems are you going to put in or plan that are going to give you a return on investment there?
Yeah, the drone survey was definitely a lot of it for this project, was to go through the motions of putting the map together and getting it done correctly, so that when I go to look at land, I can put together my own maps and import them.
I use this as a sort of learning, therefore.
Yeah, just so I'm prepared.
Yeah. I would. Well, that's all pretty straightforward. But it's just for you to be prepared to spend that money. That's all. Because if you don't have all of the kit yourself, I mean, you can. I think there's a thread that we did a little while back. Just trying to think who I did that for. I think I did it in geography. Just bear with me. Oh, I know, Andy Promisel. That's right. Geography. I did a post a few weeks back because Andy Promisel had a question about to me privately about setting up a. They want to do, I think, kind of like what you were talking about. They wanted to set up or get the kit to be able to do drone-based surveys. And so I did. I put it in here. I might have to do an actual search for it. Oh, I know where I put it in yeah, sorry, pardon me. Mapping service. Got to look with the right place. Just bear with me for a minute here, mate. Marking colours. There's a lot of good information in here now, which is good. So what you are, yeah, here's the post here. So I'll just tag you in there, Dylan. I'll tag you. That's your name, Dylan Birkin. So that post there, what we do is go through the kits that are out there and the costs, which of course you can establish. Now, that might be something that you want to look at, but because otherwise the alternatives are that you're going to be looking at, you know, hiring in part or hiring people in part to pull all of this together for you. Now, of course, as a Regrarians Planner subscriber, which you are, then you have access to us to generate the mapping for you. Okay. So
Awesome.
once the onus is on you to get the data, you get the data, we'll do the maps.
Very cool. And do you guys use like regular CAD when you edit on there?
Sorry, when you edit, what do you mean?
Sorry, for like your 3D, do you do like 3D modeling on your?
No, what we use is we use Drone Deploy. So Drone Deploy is a sort of a whole is quite a whole package. So we use it to design our flight plans. So we'd work with you to develop a flight plan of whatever property you're working on for a start. Excuse me, darling. Could you give me some tissue? Excuse me. We use that to develop the flight plans, and then Drone Deploy is we upload all of the imagery that you have captured, and then it processes all of that imagery into a variety of forms. So, for example, I've just done one for the property I'm at the moment, which is why I'm up where I am. Thank you. Just excuse me for one moment, Dylan, while I get rid of something.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that, mate. That's been coming for a while. So with Drone Deploy, what we'll use it for is to process that imagery, and now that will process that imagery into a variety of forms. Sorry, it's a bit slow because of where we are. And so, for example, here's a 50-meter flyover that we did of this particular property that we did. So we uploaded all the imagery, and then the imagery gets stitched together in the cloud by this software. And then from that, it then generates a 3D model, a plant health assessment, and elevation data. And because we have a level of subscription that allows us to do that, and then what we can do is we can export that data in a variety of different forms: point cloud, 3D model, elevation, etc. Now you can go and become a subscriber to on the lower level. I think it's called a discovery or something like that. And you won't have access to. You'll have access to some of this, but you won't have any access to anything that's really that useful to you, like from a contour perspective or 3D perspective. So we play with all of that, and that's our part of the bargain for you. So if you look at this 3D model, I haven't looked at this one, for example. We will generate that, and then that'll all become available to you. So does that sort of answer your questions there?
Yeah, totally. I didn't realize that Drone Deploy went that deep.
Yeah, oh no, it's a super platform, and they're really great people. So as you can see here, so here's an example of this particular property that I flew a couple of days ago, and it's just, sorry, the internet's a bit slow, but it creates a 3D model, which is pretty cool. It does weird shit to trees, but that's what it does, and buildings and whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty cool in how it creates that whole possibility. And then from that, the point cloud as well, which is pretty cool. Always enjoy looking at the point cloud stuff. And then, of course, sorry, one. I'll go back. Plant health is a really interesting one as well. The plant health layer, because it tells you through a variety of different filters what's going on the landscape in terms of photosynthesis and so on. So, and photosynthetic activity. So, yeah, lots of stuff you can play with this app, which is why we use it.
Awesome. And I guess my last question about that would be, in your experience going on land searches, are most sellers open to letting you run the drone around for a bit to do
That's
this kind of?
I think that's going to be something that's quite new. Look, they don't seem to be too worried about having their real estate or their realtor do that. So I would look. There's a couple of things that are play here, Dylan. One is that there's, I can't remember what your federal air safety organisation is over there, or authority is, but there will be laws that you have to follow there, and that's going to be up to you as to how close to those you follow. I don't think most of these realtors that put their drones up in the sky are following or are registered by any of these laws. In fact, I would say most people who are drone users of the sub 2 kilogram or 4 pound drone class are not using, are not registered or for use at all, and are only mildly compliant. But putting that to one side, I don't think that there's any harm in asking and saying, look, I would really like to say, look, I'm looking to just paint the case honestly and say, I'm looking to appraise this property. I use drones to help me with this. Here's an example of how I use a drone to do that, and you can use some of our examples if you like, and say, can I do this? Because there's no harm to anybody.
Right.
And as a vendor, I would say, well, great. It means that you're actually, investigating, and if they say no to you, well, then that sort of says, well, I'm not that interested in selling my property, am I?
Yeah.
Or I've got something to hide, or I've got some weird privacy blah blah going on, which obviously people in your country and others have an issue around. Yeah.
For now.
But yeah, well, I mean, I say to people all the time, well, DJI, the company, are clearly a state-owned enterprise from China who are using Westerners to gradually map all of their properties, so that it helps with the Chinese takeover of the world.
Yeah,
that really gets people turned on if they've got an inkling of privacy concerns, or if they've got an inkling of concern of China doing just that. Which it may well be the case, but come on.
Yeah. I'm doing we have the FAA 107 testing out here to try to get the commercial license for it, and I'm blown away with how thorough it is to fly the drone.
Yeah, no, it is. It's the same here in Australia. I think it's a better rule, because what they've done is they've differentiated by weight, the different classes of drones. So you've basically got to just comply with a series of guidelines, and you're meant to send in your flight plan 5 days in advance of your flight. So just in case you are in an area, well, it just means that the flight plan is registered. And if you're a light aircraft flying in that area, well, when you do your manifest and flight plan, the drone operator's flight plan is registered. And it means that if you're doing a low altitude fly, which some people are prone to do, particularly in light aircraft, well, then you know that there's a drone working in that area. And that's quite reasonable. I think our laws are really, really good. And it also means that if you're a sub 2 kilo or sub 4 pound drone, it means that people like you and me can have businesses that use this technology without having to go and spend $10,000 or $20,000 or do testing system, get tested and have a whole regime of learning, which can be I wouldn't want to go and do it. I mean, I failed my bloody boat license, so God knows if I'm going to be able to get an aerial, a drone license, because that's way above my pay grade.
Yeah, I did the driving test 3 times. Not proud.
What was that?
I did the driving test 3 times out
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Well, that's right. I probably would. If I did it again, I'd probably fail it too. Thank God I got it the second or third time.
Yeah, they're saying that the guy that's teaching the online class I'm watching says that the drone test, though, is thorough enough that it's like you're a step away from just getting your basic pilot's license.
Yeah, right.
Well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, that's good. Anyway, so yeah, there's your stuff, mate. So have a play. Go and have a look at what data you've got available through the different tiers. And, and if you're still struggling, of course, come back to us and let us know, and we'll see how we can help. That's one thing that we've got is a fairly big strength of ours is mapping. So
awesome.
Yep. All right.
Thank you very much.
No worries, mate. All good to talk.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too, mate. Bye. And I think this will probably be the last one, Pablo. Hello, Pablo.
Hola.
Hola. That doesn't sound like a Pablo.
No, it's past. Well, we are together, but it's past here.
Oh, okay. What can I help you with?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, we have a lot of questions and we are a little bit overwhelmed especially with the water week.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I wanted to ask a little bit more about, something else. We have 2.5 hectares of our land was completely abandoned for 30 years, and the local council came and kind of cleaned the bush area.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have maybe, I don't know, 50% of the land is covered with oak trees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest is, clear areas, and the grass is kind of starting to come back.
Yep.
Grow. And that 2.5 hectares is fenced.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really wondering more about if you could maybe, I don't know, if you have any ideas about which animals we could have in this area, mainly in terms of like regenerating the land and
sure. Well, I think sheep would probably be. It's either going to be sheep or goats. Well, it's going to be sheep, goats, or pigs, but probably sheep would be the easiest. The reason for that is the fencing with sheep is not so difficult, and they're relatively easy to use animals, and you're in an area of the world where there's lots of different sheep producers, so it shouldn't be too hard to get the sheep. Now, you may well want to, as I said to Garth earlier, because you're relatively new to farming or new to agriculture, have you ever used sheep before?
I mean, I worked in farms where we had sheep and cattle, but I've never been like in charge of sheep.
Sorry, you remember what? Pardon?
Yeah, I've been working in farms where we had sheep and cattle, so I'm a little bit familiar, but I've never been responsible.
Yeah. Well, that's about to change. But you can just be partly responsible. And what I mean by that is that, you don't, a lot of people, what they do with livestock is and this is almost like a broken record for me. A lot of people, when they start their journey, they buy animals and then they breed with them. And breeding animals is challenging. So what we recommend to people is don't start by breeding. Just start by buying animals and that are older and that maybe are not carrying babies or don't have babies with them, and that you just use them to cut your grass and just do that. And then you learn them, right? And then you're not putting too much pressure on yourself because you already have, you just said then, I mean, you're already going, wow, we've got all this water stuff to do. And when you run a landscape for the first time, there's a lot to go on. There's a lot of things going on. So you don't want to have too many things go on if you can. So try and keep things as simple as possible. And so for me, that's why I would say, get some sheep and some goats and just use them like you might use a grass cutter and put them through the landscape maybe once, twice or 3 times, depending on the season and how much grass you have, how much growth you have, and then sell them and go, okay, and there you go. Now I'm not responsible again. Right? You take a break.
Yeah.
You can.
And well, it's hard for you to tell, but because you don't know exactly where we are. But how?
No, I do know exactly where you are.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
So you've been around here then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Pablo had mentioned. Sorry, I forgot. So in terms of numbers, when we talk about small area, because you work in really large areas.
It doesn't matter. It's the same principle anywhere. It's the same principle anywhere. The principle is how much is there to eat, and how long is that there for? So the question I would have for you, and it's a bit early for you now because you're at the start of the growing season, right?
Yeah.
So you will need to probably wait until February or March. Okay, so you'll go through the cold period, and during the cold period, growth will really slow down, especially under the trees because of the shade of the trees. And then when you come into early spring, of course, then the growth will start to explode. And it's really going to be at that point. Well, it's when like in your area, the best time to bring those animals in will be mid-spring, when the grasses are at the height of the leaf to stem ratio, and that means there's more leaf than stem on the grass. That's when the grass is at its most nutritious. And you do that, and then bring those animals in then, and then rotate them through. Now, what you'll need to estimate is how many, and you might be able to talk to your neighbours who even run sheep. You might say, how many sheep per acre or how many sheep per hectare do you run? Right? Or talk to some shepherds, and they'll say, yeah, in this area, it's 5 sheep per hectare, right? And you go, okay, well, that's what I'll run off. You just run off what they say. Otherwise, you're going to have to measure everything and then work that out yourselves. But once you do one rotation through your landscape, you'll know how many sheep that you need. And in this program still to come, in the REX program, we've still got to talk about grazing planning, so holistic planned grazing. So when we talk about that, you'll understand more of the principles that we're talking about here and how to plan. And the good thing is you have time because you're not going to go and buy sheep now. Okay?
Yeah, I mean...
So relax, enjoy your Christmas, okay?
we are relaxed. It's just like, there is a lot of decisions to take. But slowly. But the thing I was interested was also
I think
about...
that's because you're married to an innovator. See how I know you too well already, you see.
I was looking to the camera when the computer is off.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about pigs was because we have so much acorns in the field.
Yeah.
Tons of acorns, and so that's why we thought, well, what about pigs?
Yeah, well, what about pigs? That's certainly, it's just that, again, not knowing you or and so on, I think that taking on pigs straight away is a fairly big challenge. And sheep will eat acorns as well, especially older sheep. So, so I would think, and you've got to be pig people.
What do you mean?
What do I mean by that? Well, everyone, look, I could run an experiment with you, which I'd run over, say, a year, and I'd have you work on a really nice pig farm. I'd have you work on a really nice chicken farm. I'd have you work on a really nice cattle farm and a really nice sheep farm, and then all the major animals and a really nice goat farm. Now, it's probable that in that you go, I really love pigs. I can't stand goats. I can't stand chickens. Or you might say, I love chickens, but I can't stand cattle and I can't stand pigs, So everyone will be one of those. Some of you, and these are the rarer people, rarer people are those who like all of the animals. And like a lot of people like all of the animals, but do they like to work with them? That's another matter.
Yeah.
So you need to determine which animals you actually like working with, because they all have their different characteristics. And ultimately, it's like dogs. When I meet pig people, there's a reason why they're pig people, because their personalities are somewhat like pigs. Because that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's a sort of an ultimate reflection of our narcissism.
Yeah. The farm is a reflection of who you are.
Yes. Well, it's domestication.
Yeah.
There's that old point. Who is domesticated here?
In that sense, I'm not really a pig person. So.
There you go. But you like eating sobrasada.
But there is really nice varieties here of Celta pigs. So
yeah, I know. That's going to be the tension. If you do have that acorn system, and you do also have chestnuts as well.
Yeah, we do.
So I think that look, it's worth pursuing, and you may develop a liking for pigs because of that. But you're also on a very small area, so in terms of it being economically productive, it's probably just going to be for your own consumption, because you just don't have the area to produce enough to be for it to be commercial.
Okay.
I had just one quick question, Darren.
Sure.
Hi. As part of the program, we do have 1 hour with you, no? I guess.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You do.
So when would you recommend?
Well, what I say to people, and it's a very good point you raised there.
At what stage of the program or the year?
Anytime in the year that you have your subscription. So,
but when?
I'll just show you. So you go. Here's the. I have mentioned this before, and I'll just speak it again. Oh, sorry, the wrong place. So go to Regrarians. Excuse me, and go to About, and go to Calendar. Oops, what happened there? Calendar. It's not working. Oh, there we go. So go to there. What you'll see is My Calendar, right? And you go and you'll look at that and you'll go, okay, I can see he's not doing something right then, right? Okay. So you go down to here and you go schedule a meeting hour. So you click on there and you select the day and the time that works for you.
Mm-hmm. But when would you recommend to someone when do you think is more effective to have? If you only have 1 hour, it is better to do it soon after the Rex, or do you think it's better to wait?
Because by that stage, and there's a few people too, what they're doing is they're having half an hour now and having half an hour later. So I think that it's probably, I think you're probably right. It's probably best at the end of the Rex.
Yeah.
And what I encourage people to do, which I think has been good that you have done, is use the rest of the time, use the workplace during the Rex to access myself and others, and also these question times that we have. Yeah. You'll notice, like today, we only had so many people out of the 75 here, so there's a lot of people who aren't here. So good on you for making the most of your investment.
Well, we really enjoy. I mean, I think it's amazing
to
so many people, and
it's your comedy hour.
That's actually
partly.
All right. Well, I'm finished up for now. So thank you so much to everybody, and thank you to you both for staying up and being patient. And enjoy Galicia. It's a very beautiful part of the world.
Yeah,
It's
we are.
amazing. It's amazing.
I have some Galician blood, so I'm kind of biased. Yeah.
Well, are you having any plans to come around this part of the world anytime soon?
I think so, but 2019 sometime.
Okay,
would be
great.
brilliant.
That would be amazing.
I may have my. I might be on a different Camino, huh?
Ah.
Well, but when the Camino comes this way, please let us know.
Okay, very good. Will do. Ben, I see your question, so thank you. And Ben, I see you've got a question about payments for ecosystem services. I might park that until we probably have a Q&A next week. So let's park that for then, because the water topic is a big one, and I want to follow up on that next week with some special Q&As. All right, so we'll wait till then. Otherwise, post something in the workplace. All right, with that, thank you very, very much. It was an excellent session this morning. I really appreciate these Q&As, and I look forward to catching you later through the day and over the weekend and next week. All right, thank you very much, and all the best to you all.